Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your effort to hear from the local voices. And I am a resident of Carlsbad. I'm a Christian pastor, United Methodist, and because of my faith, it causes me to be greatly concerned about how we care for each other and how we care for this planet upon which we depend for our existence.
I want to start off by complimenting our friends here from the oil and gas industry. You all are some of the most innovative people in the world. As an environmental lawyer, I've studied some of the things that you guys do, and it's amazing. I mean, figure out how to recover resources trapped in shale formations that were long thought to be inaccessible. And so that's brought us to a place of energy independence and greatly reduced emissions from the electricity sector. So we need you all to innovate again.
None of us like rules for ourselves, but from kindergarten to family to city to state to federal and even international entities, we all have rules that are for the common good. There are rules that Forest Tire cannot dump our old tires on an empty lot, or Master Lube cannot dump our used crankcase oil in the storm sewers that go to the river. Our air is just as sacred as our earth and water. And now we're dealing with methane and other toxic byproducts that are part of the oil and gas industry that is so important to all of us in this area.
My name is Penny, and I live right across from oil and gas fracking rigs here in Carlsbad. I'm very concerned about my children's health and their future. Our life is a story of before and after. Before the oil rigs came to be across from our home, I could sit outside and wait for the children to come home, watching the birds in the trees. After the rigs came, I sat outside. I got blisters around my mouth and nose while waiting for my daughter's bus. And I noticed that birds had fallen dead out of my trees. The only difference I could see was the oil rigs. Before the oil rigs, my son was well, but since the oil rigs came, he suffers from severe nosebleeds 2 or more times a week. But since he turned 17, I sent him to school in Roswell, and his nose cleared up. But when he comes home on weekends, his nose gushes again. I wonder what is coming out of these production sites. What are the long-term health effects? I would like to have more monitoring near these sites. I would like to know what is emitted. I would like more regulations and accountability.
I'm a 17-year resident of Carlsbad, and I'm married to a 4th-generation Carlsbad native. This is my home, and it will be for many, many years to come. I'd like to express my gratitude and appreciation for coming down here and listening to the diverse concerns and perspectives and voices regarding methane in this community. I also want to clearly state that change is hard. I'm pleased to hear the collaborations that I see this organization putting together. We need to understand the risks, the facts, and have reasonable, responsible, and effective policies in place that protect the greater good, something we can all embrace as neighbors together.
As we find continued ways to partner together to bring innovation and data, we appreciate the conversation, we look forward to the collaboration, and we also recognize and appreciate what you guys are doing for us while also keeping in mind the need for economic development and diversity. Thank you.
As a former attorney who worked with venture capital firms and high-tech startups, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for us.
According to the EDF Environmental Defense Fund, each year New Mexico oil and gas companies waste around $275 million worth of natural gas, losing an additional of $43 million in tax royalty that can be used for funding for public education.
It is important to say that New Mexico's economy has grown thanks to the oil and gas industry. It has also helped develop new jobs and fund our children's education. However, the industry continues to grow, and we must find ways to use our oil and gas resources more wisely.
But the health issue impacts everyone here. It includes oil field workers, it includes retired people, it includes a baby that was just born today at the hospital. And Carlsbad has been evaluated and exceeding EPA ozone levels. Methane is now something we have to deal with.
And I think it's important that we are not reactive but proactive in preventing harm. This means working to prevent negative impacts in the future and looking at current and past exposure on residents and the health impacts that occurred due to exposure. Much of the chemical exposure is due to poor flare management and could have long and lasting health effects on community residents. Potential health effects from exposure include eye, throat, nose irritation, increased risk for asthma, respiratory disease, heart attacks, and cancer. Current practices could lead to undue exposure. For example, Eddy County has the highest asthma hospitalization crude rate for adults than any other county in the state, and the Southeast region has the highest rate of asthma hospitalization discharges among children. So my first question is, if the regulation is designed, is it to protect the health and safety of the industry, or is it to protect workers and residents?
In this highly competitive oil and gas industry, reasonable standards would cost a little more to implement. So it would not be fair to those companies that do want to do the right thing if not all the operators are operating by the same rules. We're the Wild West, but we're also God's children that have a responsibility for our siblings around the world and our posterity. We as a state should set pollution standards and enforce them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking to the 2-minute time frame.